We are live. Namaste, good evening, Adab, Sasyakal. I'm Ashish Banka, HR leader and HR curator of HR Sampark. Today we have a brilliant day and it's a very new beginning to our one of the podcasts, Managing C-Suite Performance. And I have none other than Mr. Brillian SK, CPO of TimesPro. Thank you, Brillian, for joining us into this quick podcast and sharing your views on a quick discussion which we are going to have. Giving a backdrop,
My pleasure.
audience, that managing as HR leaders, we all are going through partnering the CEO to manage the performance, to say how you need to do, and it's a very tricky thing when you come to the C-suite and specifically the PMS times during this corner. It is very important for us to know the right way of doing it. We all are learning, eventually growing in our career, and it is important that we learn from somebody experienced and who can help us, none other than Brillian. Brillian, apart from his profession, is Toastmaster, a renowned HR speaker, and also one of the HR leaders of Mumbai Sampark CHRO group. Brillian, my first question to you is. HR role, how does a CPO or a HR leader support CEO to manage C-suite performance, specifically during the PMS cycle?
Thank you, Ashish, and good evening, friends. It's well known about how the CEO and CFO work together, right? It's all about money, but the CEO, CPO, or the HR connect is emerging. And as my CEO loves to say that, balancing the wallet and the ethics. We as HR professionals help the CEOs balance the ethical part of it. The role of a CPO or a CHRO is very critical, and often we are pulled into tactical and operational elements. But I feel one of our crucial roles is to be a trusted advisor, a business enabler, and a sounding board for the CEO. And we need to help bridge gaps in performance, specifically aspects on behavior, anticipate change, and be a support system for the CEO to manage. I mean, C-suite performance is very critical. We have seen people talk about appraisals, but C-suite appraisals are never spoken about. I think there is a lot of potential and scope when HR and the CEO works together to define quantitative and qualitative KPIs to help measure performance of these leaders. How do we bring in operational excellence? How do we bring in quality control? How do I bring in process excellence? How do I bring in HR excellence? Why should HR be only HR heads or HR professionals' responsibility? So these are some of the areas where CPOs, CHROs, and HR pros can work very closely and help manage performance for the C-suite leaders.
Thank you, Brilliant, for kickstarting this backdrop of this. A question, maybe a bit amateur, but maybe for the larger audience of the younger HR professionals, is explaining what is C-suite. Our topic is managing C-suite performance. If you can throw some light for younger people, what is C-suite?
C-suite would be all the people who are so-called chief executives in the organization, the chief executive officers, the CSOs, chief service officers, the chief sales officers, digital officers, technical officers, all those people in key roles leading larger businesses or functions, working very closely with the CEO. In effect, an N-1 for the CEO.
Thank you so much, Brilliant, for that explanation. You have been closely working with a lot of CEOs in your current and previous organizations. Maybe give some insights to the audience that what are the metrics used, while a CEO judges a performance of his leaders, what does he do or she do? What are the metrics which they keep in mind, or generic metrics
It's
because
a very
every function
tricky
will have.
Yeah, it's a very tricky question, Ashish, because most of the time the outcomes are directly dependent on revenue, profits, margins. But of late, what I have been seeing is broken into two parts. One is the business impact, and the second is the organization building. When it comes to business impact, profits, revenues, margins make an impact. But when we think about organization building, some of the areas which are catching up and is a critical element for measurement includes customer satisfaction, net promoter scores. I was surprised when I heard this term. I had not known about it. It is LTV, called as a lifetime value of a customer. How effectively are we managing the lifetime value of a customer to get the maximum benefit with minimal investments? The role of qualitative assessments which include culture building, innovation, focusing on people. There are elements including statistics on hiring. How is the employee satisfaction happening? What is the retention status? What is the kind of service quality that we have as an organization? These are some of the matrices that we tend to use, and it's very important for HR professionals to understand how these impact and why provide support to the CEOs and the CXOs to build their performance culture within the organization.
Thank you, Brilliant. Two questions which come to my mind while you narrated this example is also in terms of halo and horn effect. We have all working with the CEOs, and it is very common which we face. How do you feel that HR
Yes.
role to nullify this halo on effect when the appraisals or the C-suite feedback is being given?
Uh, Truth be told, Ashish, we all know the recency effect has a big impact on everything. But what makes life easier for everyone, especially for HR, is to have a continuous measurement and management of data points, which should be used rather than the recency effect, which could lead to a halo or a horn effect. I think increasingly the dependency on data, the dependency on insights from these data is leading to a reduced, I would say, level of impact with regards to the horn and halo effect. But all said and done, it is unavoidable, but still, it is reducing to a large extent.
Thanks, Biren. HR is specifically when they come at a C-suite level, specifically when they join any organization, they might be joining from one organization where they're already a C-suite, or that can be their first, step to become a C-suite. Specifically at this, if you can help us that HR leaders going through that journey, how they become the trusted partners of the CEO, because immediately when you come, CEO is also a bit inhibitions to involve them. What are the key things which an HR leader should do to become one of the trusted partners?
Wow, that's a fantastic question, Ashish. In fact, I would like to share what a candidate shared with me in an interview. I was interviewing an executive assistant for my organization, and I asked, what is a measure of saying that you become a perfect executive assistant? And she said, the best way to know that your manager or your boss trusts you is when he or she gives you full access to your email. And I think that's a very good measure, while it is not defined anywhere in any of the books. Very similar to that, for us as HR professionals, what is important is to first get a foot in the door in critical conversations, get a hold of review meetings where you participate effectively. It takes time and it takes effort. It was not easy for me when I joined any organization. It doesn't come to you automatically just because you have the title. There needs to be a confidence in your abilities to not just put on the role of a chief people officer or a CHRO, but also to ensure that you're looking at the organization elements as well. So your understanding of the business plays a crucial role in building that trust in the CEO. It takes time, but it is possible. I have seen many CEOs and CPOs and CHROs partner to create organizations that are amazing, truly amazing. Many CEOs have done roles, CPOs have done the roles of CEOs, because you know the people aspect, which is critical. You understand the business. It's only an element of how do you grow in the role slowly but steady.
Thanks, Viren. I think that's very important and good, insight for a HR leader. Specifically, when it comes to the question of giving feedback, because if a CEO feels something, sometimes informal feedbacks are given over a cup of tea, coffee, messages, emails. But when it comes to a formal assessment during the appraisal time, and HR is a chair is fixed, is it so? First question is, does HR have a chair when CEO gives a feedback to the other C suits? And if yes, then what does HR do? What is the HR role to play at that point of time where there is a one-way discussion or the two-way discussion happening between the two stakeholders?
So I will take this response in a two-pronged approach. The answer is yes, HR gets to participate. Two, not necessarily every time they would be in the room. But what happens is there is a discussion in person between the CEO and me about elements, what is it that we are assessing, what are the areas, feedback, inputs. I would say a 360 review of what's going around in the organization is collected because of the sensitivities involved. I'll be very honest, no one will like a third person being present, especially when you are working directly with the CEO and you're given a feedback. I would say the alignment is most important. For a CEO, what is important is to understand sensitivities, understand the nitty gritties of what works with whom. Every person is unique. Some people may really get offended if there is an HR presence in the room. Sometimes it's okay, it's an open discussion. But what I would say is work on areas of agreement between the CEO and the CPO or the CHRO to understand aspects that probably the CEO may have not looked at. And as you had mentioned earlier, the recency effect plays a big impact. So focus on providing inputs one on one. And wherever there is a need for support in terms of behavioral changes, coaching interventions, I can come in as a chief people officer. I would say a chief partner to the CEO to help provide those for the C-suite leaders.
uh, Question tilting from performance management to the thought process of the C-suite. How they look at HR. I understand the positioning of HR is very different from different organizations. But when this specifically that happens, they know that HR will have the first hand of doing the matrix of increment post appraisals, either the merit increase or the inflation increase. So all these details, how does other C-suits look at other HR as a CP or a CHRO role?
So Ashish, it reminds me, it's like that. I would say Dulha, right? When it's the first time he's brought on a horse, there is a lot of music, drums are played, people are excited. But once that is over, you probably tend to forget about it. Jokes aside, I think it's been a while since HR is now seriously considered as a bouncing board, a partner for many of these C-suite leaders. They don't look at HR just as a one-time approach, especially during the appraisals. What I have
Mm,
observed in my journey as a HR professional and
mm,
practitioner is that once you have built that trust and connect, they will
mm.
come back to you once in a while to check. While they know what they want to do, they will bounce it off with you saying, "This is how we are going to do it. Is it okay?" And I think that speaks a lot about how worldwide HR has now, while they may not officially be seen as having a seat in the boardroom, but they are consulted in sensitive matters, especially when it comes to people, when it comes to compensation. Because as they say, it's always good to reach out to an expert when you are not the expert. And I think almost all the C-suite leaders have been following this approach. It's a good sign. Yes, there are few more hurdles that we need to overcome, that it should not be just a random appraisal linked discussion, but it should be a journey which helps build not just the organization but also build relationships, so that in future if that CXO becomes a CEO, he or she will have to work with the CPO or CHRO for sure.
That's a very good point you mentioned in Synchronicity that CXO, any of the CXO can become. Nowadays, the doors are open for everybody to become a CEO. In fact,
Everybody.
even the HR can become a CEO. We have so many examples, as you also mentioned.
Absolutely.
Looking at the darker side of it, there are also performance related concerns which are there, which can be behavioral, which can be functional, which can be in terms of a capability that you hired. But at that level, we don't doubt the competency of an individual. It's just the alignment is not happening, what the organization expects. How this feedback mechanism, so what happens? Like, is it a immediate exit when we know things are not happening? Is the waiting period, or like if you can give some insights on that?
Okay, so this is a tricky aspect, Ashish. To be very honest, it's not as easy as managing an exit for someone junior. At a
Mm.
senior level, the entire apple cart starts to become imbalanced. You've worked with someone for a very long time, and suddenly there are challenges. And what do you tell the others? Right? In my career, I had the unfortunate opportunity to manage a few of these exits. And the best part is the way in which it was all managed. One is to make sure that it is not personal, it is based on data and insights. You need to use tact, you need to balance, and you need to be sensitive. One important element is sensitivity, because one senior exit can trigger a lot of questions within the organization. So it needs to be managed out very effectively. I have learned, thanks to the CEOs and the presidents that I've worked with, is giving respect to the individual is most important. Yes, as you said, sometimes it's just an alignment issue, sometimes it could be something else, but it's not working. It's not working. That's reality. So it needs to be phased out effectively. We need to agree and accept that people will leave, and sometimes they may be seniors. The messaging and the communication around it, especially coming from HR and from the CEO, needs to be very closely and minutely managed so that there is no chaos. It is it is impossible that there will be no rumors. Yes, there will be some gossip, there will be rumors, but sending out a very positive message and making sure that the exit is clean is what we can help in. And I think HR has one of the toughest job here when they are managing such exits, because it's not just now, it's about the future as well, because you will hire someone into that role and you will have to explain what happened. That it's not easy. It requires you to be more than business sensitive. It requires you to put in all your caps, including your emotional hat, including your business hat, including your people hat. And I think balancing that effectively, it can be managed. But exceptional cases where it is an ethical issue or an absolutely unprofessional behavior that leads to a downfall of an organization, instant cuts don't happen. In such cases, it's an instant cut off from the relationship. But otherwise, it's structured and planned in a manner that it works out well for both.
Thanks so much, Billion. I think you also answered my next question is how the communication channel should happen when the C-suite is. Uh, in the interest of times, we wanted to make this, entire podcast very quick and lively and, in a short time so that people can get essence out of it. Two questions before I end is one is the performance when somebody joins. During this period, there might be some C-suite joining. How does the HR role play in expectation setting, Billion? In when somebody joins new to the organization, what is the role which a HR leader plays in expectation setting? Because we all have come across that communication is a big challenge, whether it is a Indian MNC or a global MNC. Communication always remains a challenge because we are inhibitions to be very upfront. And sometimes if we are upfront, then we are misunderstood. So it's a double-edged sword. Maybe you can give some insights for HR leaders to effectively manage that.
Thank you, Ashish. And I think it's a very important question. What I have done and found success is, rather than leaving it for a discussion after the person joins, this starts off initially with the first round of conversations to assess what it is. So, generally, for a C suite leader, the interview round is very different from a normal interview that we do. I tend to spend a lot of time explaining about the organization, the role, and then getting into explaining what are the key expectations, as detailed as 3, 6, 9 months outcomes that we expect. So, what happens is, it's one way of saying the person and grooming them towards what is the organization expecting from you. And this gets carried forward in the next round with my CEO, where this is reinforced, and probably additional layers of his expectation from an organization, a stakeholder perspective, is brought in. And I think that has helped us achieve a lot of alignment, rather than some person joining in and you give him a sheet of paper saying these are the expectation. It could be a shocker. You'll say, "Arey, I didn't sign up for this. You said something else. The interview asked me about what chocolate you like, what dress color you prefer, and suddenly you're asking me to give me a CAC of less than this number. I was not ready." Right? So set the expectations right from the time when you feel this is the candidate where you want to go ahead.
Thank you, Brillian. I think somebody wrote to me that it's not a podcast, it's a master class. So thank you so much for that experience, not to me, but to the entire audience. In the interest of time, since we are coming at the fag end of the session, I will just be able to take one audience question which has come to me over WhatsApp. I found this interesting
Sure.
question since, specifically in startups, when most of the startups now engage HR leaders at a very initial level, and then they hire a C-suite, but founders have a very strong connect with all the members who have joined, and they take a lot of feedback and they start building opinions also at point. What is the way which a C-suite and a HR should mitigate this? How should they establish the clear line of discussion and communication with the CTO and CEO, and how they nullify the effect of these Chinese whispers which are going to the people? Because people, as I said, will not come to their face and they will talk something which is not in line about you as an individual to them. So
So Ashish, it reminds me of one of the associations that I had, where the mindset was suno sabki karo khud ki, which meant you seem like you're listening to everyone, but you end up doing what you want. And I think what the person who put up a question is right in saying that the need for HR participation right from the start is now seen to be applied across startups. What is important also to understand is, unfortunately, in many cases, the level of hiring of these HR are not at the seniority that it should be. They generally tend to say, "Chal yaar, let's hire someone who can manage A plus B plus C." They don't think about the future. And that's probably one of the areas, if startup owners, people with a long term vision, can invest some time and, of course, money to hire at a particular level, who can automatically then scale up to become a CHRO or a CPO, I think these challenges would be avoided. The problem comes in is when in such startups the hiring happens at a mid junior level, the CEO is not very comfortable, and that comfort takes up a lot of your time. And that's where these offline conversation, behind the back conversation, all of these starts gathering, I would say, dust around, and then it creates a big mess. My suggestion would be, if startup people would be listening to this, is think about your CHRO or a CPO hire as critical as any other C-suite hire, because it will set forth the direction in which you will be moving. You may have some big, hairy, audacious goals, as we call bhag goals. And I love to say it, if you really want people to bhag low, participate, then you hire someone with caliber, someone who's competent, who has the experience, or you hire anyone at any level so that people will bhag low, they'll run away. So you decide what you want to do.
what a anecdote to to come to this fag end of the session, Brilliant. I think, as I second the person who mentioned, this is not less than a master class, not only for the entire audience but a lot of other HR leaders also. Sometimes we learn from each other and we miss out the basics, not consciously but unconsciously, and
True.
it is good to be to be reinstated or maybe reminded of what are the basics. Billion, I would like to say a big thank you to you for agreeing to do this at a very short span, and also rebuilding and re-emphasizing the connect is so important. Sometimes at level of R, it's not easy to come back, but I really, from bottom of my heart, I'm so thankful for giving your precious time on a Sunday evening. And audience, this
My
is
pleasure.
Mr. Brillian. I think he did immense justice not only to all of us on this topic, but also help us through to do the night thing to navigate when we are stuck into this situation. I thank audience for joining in, and hope you all enjoy this podcast, the first of its own kind, and we will keep doing it every week with other HR leaders of other chapters. Thank you, Brilliant, once again for your time, and it was stupendo, fantabulously amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashish. Thank you, HR Sampark. Stay in touch. Let's learn more.
Thank you.
Cheers.